Okay, so our next question says, assuming a speed of 5 knots and slack tide, so assume that there's no impact of tide, how long would it take to go from red 10 GI, flashing red 4 seconds to the southwest of Faulkner Island, to 8C, which is flashing red 4 seconds on 6 Mile Reef? So, assuming you're going 5 knots and there's no tide, we want to know how long it's going to take us to go from this point right here to this point here. All right, so let's start by just going ahead and drawing a little bit of a line. So we know what we're talking about. So we put this in the center of that aid and put that in the center of that aid. And you know what I always do, I always go back and look at it 2 or 3 times, because what happens when you move one end of the ruler, you know, the other one tends to move a little bit. And I just make these lines very light so that if I wanted to go back and change them at some point, I could. I'm not going to label this one because we're just going to use this one for a short time. But again, if you wanted to label it, you know, you could put red 10 GI to, you know, just put 6 Mile or something like that. It's just something that reminds you. So we want to know how long it's going to take, right? So that is time. And so we go back to the triangle. If we find out the distance and divide it by the speed, that's going to tell us how long it's going to take us. So this is a very simple exercise. We measured a distance earlier, so this is just another distance measuring exercise. We'll do it 2 ways. So the first thing we'll do is we'll take our protractor and we will put it right on the marks, and that tells me that it is 8.5 nautical miles. Let's check the distance a different way. So remember how we did this earlier? We took our dividers, we went over to latitude, because the minutes of latitude are always the same length. Longitude is different. So there's 5 miles. So if I take this point to a point on the line, our 5 is too long, so we bring it back right to the point. And we go back over here and we measure, and this is, sure enough, 3.5. So 3.5 plus 5, so 8.5 is what we have. And so the question is, how long is it going to take us if we're doing 5 knots? So how many knots do we cover in 1 hour? Well, nautical miles we cover, well, we cover 5, right? So it's going to take 1 hour to go the first 5, and then it's going to take some portion of the hour to go the next 3.5. And to figure that out, you would take 3.5 divided by 5, and that would give you a portion of the hour. Let me just not trust myself and go to the calculator. Having a calculator is always a good thing to have. So 3.5 divided by 5 is 0.7, right? And you always keep pieces of scrap paper around as well. And then what you do is you take the 0.7, so you could say this is going to take 1.7 hours, or you could take that 0.7 and multiply it times 60, which is what I normally do, and that means 0.7 of an hour is 42 minutes. So it should take 1 hour and 42 minutes, should be the planned time if you were going to go from this bell here, southwest of Faulkner, to 6 Mile Reef. So no tide, assuming that you could be free to sail whatever course you want. You would, you know, go on this heading, which we could go figure out if we wanted to, and you would sail that for 1 hour and 42 minutes. So, you know, 1 hour and 20 minutes into it, let's say that you know, it's important that you stay on this side of the reef. And typically, by the way, like, you know, what I do is I want to know the exact compass course to something, but then I'll err a little bit. So let's figure out actually what this compass course is. Here we'll use our protractor. So we'll go right on the line. There we go. Turn the compass so it's even to it. So with no variation, it says that we've got a course of 99. Happens to be very close to the same course that we had. It does look parallel to Kimberley Reef. And we've got a 15 degree variation, so 104. Assuming we have no deviation in our compass on the boat. So 104 is what we would steer. So that's the heading to go directly from this gong to this gong. But is that what we really want to do? Well, probably not, right? Because we might be wrong. So what we might want to do is we might want to steer 105 or 106. Something that would put us to the favorable side. Again, if we had a deep boat, we wouldn't want to be north of 6 Mile Reef, because what would happen? We'd hit 6 Mile Reef. So we want to be to the south of it, right? So 104 is the course, but you'd want to course over ground, which could either be heading, or if you had a little bit of slippage or whatever it might be, that would be closer to 105 or 106. And then, after sailing maybe an hour and 15 minutes or going an hour and 15 minutes, you'll know how far. It's going to take you an hour to go 5 miles, and you're 3.5 miles away after an hour. And this is probably going to be visible from a couple of miles. So at 15, probably, hour and 15, you're going to want to start looking for it. You're going to want to start listening for it. Because what you don't want to do is, if you're an hour and 42 into it and you have not seen or you have not heard this bell, something's wrong, right? And that's the way I think about these navigation problems. Something is wrong. I want to know. I never make an assumption. And so as I get closer to it, I want to know, okay, there it is. As a matter of fact, I'll go one step further. A lot of times in the power boat, I'll come down the middle of the sound. You actually go pretty close to 6 Mile Reef when you come down the middle of the sound. But as I think about these aids to navigation, let's say I'm like right here, and I see this and I say to myself, well, it's 6 Mile Reef. I don't want to make an assumption about it. I'll get out the binoculars and I will look at it to make sure it says 8C on it. And I'll say, oh yeah, that's definitely 6 Mile Reef because it says 8C on it. So that's, again, I don't want to make assumptions.